distinguished speakers joining us from Tokyo, Seoul, and Taipei, and Brussels. My name is Natalia Butyrska. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to today's discussion titled Asian Models of Security Guarantees, What Lessons Can Ukraine Learn? The event is organized by the New Europe Center with the support of the International Renaissance Foundation. We are discussing this topic today because it's especially relevant right now, while NATO membership remains Ukrainian strategic goal. At this stage, our country is exploring what other forms of security guarantees could effectively protect it from future Russian aggression. That's why the experience of our Asian partners is especially interesting and valuable for Ukraine. At the New Europe Center, we have been actively studying this topic. One of examples is our research, the NATO Plus security formula, where we analyzed several security models, including the Korean and Taiwanese examples. Today's discussion brings together experts from Ukraine, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan to explore which elements of Asia's security experience could be most useful for Ukraine as it shapes its future security guarantees. We also hope this conversation will help us understand why the issue of security guarantees is important not only for Ukraine, but for broader international security system as well. It's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers. Leonid Litra, Senior Research Fellow at the New Europe Center, Ukraine. Professor Atsuko Higashino, Institute of Humanities and Social Sciences, University of Tsukuba, Japan. Professor Kim Yong-jun, Dean of Academic Affairs, National Security College at the Korean National Defense University, advisor at the Ministry of National Defense, Republic of Korea. Dr. Kathy Fan, analyst with the National Security Research Program at the Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology, Taiwan. A warm welcome to all of you. Now let's move to our main discussion. Each speaker will have around 7 minutes to respond to questions related to their country's experience. After that, we will have follow-up questions for all speakers and continue our discussion. Leonid, let's start with you. Ukrainian's NATO membership remains uncertain as not all allies are ready to support it fully. In this context, what kind of security guarantees could Ukraine realistically expect? And what lessons from Asia countries' experience could be most valuable for Ukraine as it seeks to enhance its security guarantees? Leonid, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for joining. I mean, it's a great pleasure to see many of you again over online. And while addressing the question which Natalia asked, I think these are maybe the most topical questions of today's discussion regarding security guarantees in Ukraine. I would say that answering your first question about which real security guarantees Ukraine can expect, I think that the debate has evolved over the last couple of years a lot in this respect. I mean, we've seen how the discussion was centered around potential membership of Ukraine into NATO. Now, these discussions have been kind of, this element is still kind of on the agenda, but it's rather considered as a secondary and rather post-war kind of possibility. Since the discussion moved more into the perspective of what kind of security guarantees can be provided for Ukraine as the war still goes on and after the war. I think this is the division we have to make when we discuss this, the security guarantees for Ukraine. From my perspective, I see the possibility of having a couple of security guarantees as the war still is ongoing. I think this is one of the one of the elements which made Putin still be very assertive in his maximalist goals in Ukraine. Was precisely the fact that if he continues the war, the West will not be able, or the West, and it's when I say the West, I mean also Japan, South Korea, also the Taiwan, also the countries which are part of the West, not geographically, but kind of value-based approach and so on. And I think that he was expecting that the West will not dare to step up its support as the war is, or to provide any security guarantees as the war is going on. But I think that these days, as we all understand, that it's very difficult to end the war without basically providing security guarantees. And it's not only a matter of of understanding of the West, but it's also a core Ukrainian demand. Like when President Zelensky says, like, we are ready to end the war, even on the contact line these days, on the front line, like to keep it as it is. He says, but what then? What happens next? Like, do we have a certainty that the war is not going to start again? So I think this is the question which makes us kind of a bit reflect on what could be the real security guarantees before the end of the war. And from my perspective, I see several of them. The most important is the funding for the war. We entered already for a couple of years, I would say, in the attrition phase of the war. In the war of attrition, the funds available for the war effort are maybe the key role to place a key role to continue the war. Russia has been better at its funding. They have revenues from, as you know, from oil and gas, from different export of minerals. And Ukraine has been widely relying on its support from its partners for the war effort. We are seeing that the Russian welfare budget is melting down. Like, there are different calculations, but according to like the most common sense calculations, the Russian welfare budget is going to end as of mid next year, which means that they will have to do very hard choices about the continuation of the war and, risking to have a steep destabilization in Russia. Why I'm saying this? Because this comes very handy with the discussion about the potential use of the Russian frozen assets to help Ukraine continue its defense and roll back the Russian aggression. There have been, as you might know, discussions about issuing a reparation credit for Ukraine, which would be around 140 billion euros, and which would be basically enough for Ukraine to, to have the necessary things for the next 2-3 years. I think this perspective is very threatening, and this now represents a security guarantee in a way before the war, because if you have the money in a war of attrition, this means that you have the means to to defend. Second element, and by the way, about the reparation credit, I think is going to come like really by the end of the year. I think there's very few alternatives how this issue can be fixed other than using this frozen assets. Second element, I think, and maybe I should have started with this one, is the armed forces of Ukraine. I mean, this is the kind of core element of Ukrainian defense now. Having almost 1 million army is what makes Ukraine still keep its independence, sovereignty, and fight back the Russian aggression. but it's not a given that this army will still be like this or better. So we would need also the support of our partners here, including on the first point I mentioned of the money, because like if you have the funds, you would be able to keep the armed forces of Ukraine in such a scale and well equipped when with everything it needs. And third element, I think, are the alliances. I mean, Ukraine has over 30 security agreements with different countries. These security agreements provide for a very advanced, I would say, cooperation in defense and security matters. I mean, they're all depending, they're all different depending on the possibilities of each country. But the general line, I think, is that if you have a very serious network of alliances supporting your country, then it means that you can have you can rely on them for addressing your most difficult challenges during the war. And when I say this, I'm actually answering in a way to your second question about the Asia experience, the experience of the Asian countries. I think that one of the elements which Ukraine needs to learn from is the alliances that the countries in Asia have been able to make. Yeah. So we have all the three countries represented today, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, are the countries which have a very developed kind of network of alliances, a very deep partnership with the United States as well. And when I say this, I'm a bit envious to the Asian countries because, you've seen the developments with between Ukraine and the US. Despite having a good relation, US has decided to how to put it correctly, US has decided to prioritize a potential war in the future in Asia versus an ongoing war in Europe, between Russia and Ukraine. So, having said this, I would say that it's very important for the future security guarantees of Ukraine if US is on board or not. If you've seen the discussions in the framework of the coalition of the willing, the countries, both the European countries that are being part of, you will see that the discussion is focused about what kind of security guarantees we can provide, not only before the war ends, but also without the US. And I think this is a very painful question to realize for Europe, that there are not too many things that Europe can offer in terms of hard security for Ukraine to provide security guarantees. However, I think that what Europe can offer is the funds, as I said, and it can offer a lot of things from planes to intelligence sharing. But this it would be a very incomplete picture if the US is not going to be part of this effort. So I guess that this is my last kind of introductory remark. I guess that we are aiming now for before the end of the war for funds for the next couple of years, like to have the certainty, which would be like a very compelling argument for Putin to reconsider his war effort. Second, we have the alliances. Second, we have the armed forces of Ukraine, of course. Third, we have the alliances. And we are aiming for the fact that in the future format of security guarantees, US will be taking part in it, although not to the level we would like to. They would likely share their intelligence, reconnaissance with Ukraine. They'd likely provide some support for the logistics of the military, supplies. They'd likely be committed to sell weapons to Ukraine, which happens now on the account of the European contributions. But they would likely not be able to actively participate with sending troops to Ukraine, as as is the case with the Asian countries we have represented here. So I think I would stop here, and I would be happy to jump in on some other questions later on.
Thank you very much, Leonid, for your thoughtful insights and for setting the tone of our discussion. And now let's turn to the Japanese perspective. Professor Higashito, Japan has long relied on its alliance with the United States and so-called US nuclear umbrella. How effective has this model been amid today's evolving security challenges? And how does Japan balance reliance on its ally with the need to strengthen its own defense capabilities? In this way, what lessons from Japan's experience might be useful for Ukraine? Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, thank you very much for having me today. It is always my greatest pleasure to speak at the New Europe Center's event like this. So, once again, thank you so much for having me. So, today, our overall title is about Asian models of security guarantee. But I just wonder if there's such a thing as the Asian models of security guarantee, having looked at the recent developments here. And at the same time, I've got a bit of a suspicion in terms of the subtitle of this event as well. What lessons should Ukraine learn? So I just wanted to start talking about security guarantee concerning Ukraine rather than anything else. Leo has already expressed the very important aspect and the elements of the security guarantee for Ukraine. So my comment may duplicate a little bit, but at the same time, I think it is really important that Ukraine, rather than Ukraine should learn lesson from anybody else. It is us. It is East Asia and any other regions that they have to learn lessons from Ukraine. So vice versa. So the fundamental question: is there anything like a security guarantee as such? So I've got a big doubts concerning this point because as the Russian aggression goes on and as more than 3 years passed since the start of the full-scale aggression, and more than 11 years has passed since the Ukraine had Budapest Memorandum, which provided so-called security assurance, not security guarantee. So everybody needs to be doubtful about their concept of security guarantee in itself. And when we come back to the basic question of what is security guarantees all about, in the first place, it should be some measures to prevent the re-aggression by Russia in the future and provide some very, very strong measures for Ukraine when Ukraine got attacked once again. From that perspective, I feel a bit awkward to listen to recent arguments in Europe because it is not really about providing an ultimate sort of security guarantee as it should be, but it looks as if all the countries, even the UK or France, the countries that used to be very active in terms of this security guarantee related argument, try to offer what they can possibly do from their larger small scales of possibilities rather than talking about how Europe can avoid indefinitely for the further aggression from Russia in the future and what is the strongest possible deterrence. So we are not really I think it doesn't really seem to be that Europe is talking from that sort of perspective, but trying to, put the puzzles like what the UK can do, what France can do, what Germany can do. But, building up these pieces wouldn't necessarily mean security guarantee. So the lesson for Ukraine is that it is the security guarantee argument. It's still so difficult and tricky to make or materialize, even to protect the countries such as Ukraine, that the country which is being attacked, suffering from the ongoing attack. So, just I said in the very beginning of my talk, I would like to make the question the other way around, that Asian countries should learn that how hard, how difficult, how tricky it could be to talk anything about security guarantee once one country is attacked by the other country which is willing to make the change of the status quo by using a military force. So, and Natalia, you asked me about the situation in Japan. So since Japan has just made a very, very brand new government, I'd like to talk a little bit about what Japan's assistance vis-a-vis Ukraine and what's Japan's overall foreign policy and environment right now. And few weeks before new Takaichi government become materialized, and I've got so many questions from my Ukrainian friend or European friend concerning the nature or characteristics of the new Takaichi government and how likely foreign policy or security policy in general. Okay, and many European people, including Ukrainian people, do not really know that Takaichi is currently sanctioned by Russia, so she cannot really enter Russia. She got sanctioned at the very start of the full-scale aggression by Russia in 2022, and she probably doesn't really know why she got sanctioned, and we don't really know why she got sanctioned. But in any case, together with former Prime Minister Kishida, she's got sanctioned by Takaichi. So of course, in general, Takaichi is very having a very hard position concerning Russia. So her policy concerning Russia and her policy concerning Ukraine is the basically continuation of the policy of Kishida and Ishiba. But hopefully Takaichi is going to make a more proactive policy concerning Russia and Ukraine compared to Ishiba, because in the end, Ishiba ended up without going to Ukraine during his term. And at the same time, even though Kishida joined the NATO summit for 3 times from 2022, 2023, 2024, Ishiba didn't go to NATO summit, which is very, very important event for me to say, in order for Japan and Europe and the US meet up in order to make up the very, consolidated and streamlined Russian policy and Ukraine policy. So it was very, very important for Ishiba to go there, but he materialized. It didn't materialize, very, very unfortunately. But at the same time, I should add that Ishiba joined all the coalition of willing online meeting. So this is what Ishiba did. When it comes to Takaichi, she joined the coalition of willing meeting already, and yesterday she had a phone meeting with Zelensky. So that is something encouraging. So what we expect is that Takaichi goes to Ukraine as soon as possible in order to visit Ukraine and hopefully Bucha to see what is really going on in Ukraine, what sort of assistance we can provide Ukraine even more, including security guarantees arguments. But when it comes to the Takaichi's Russian policy, there's a bit of uncertainty here because the Takaichi is determined to continue the Sakhalin-2, which is the Japan's large investment concerning energy security in Russia. And we had Japan and US had the summit recently, and Takaichi seems to have told President Trump that Japan is going to continue with Sakhalin-2. And everybody knows that the Sakhalin-2 is the exemption of the EU sanction, for example, for the price cap of the oil price. But we are not really sure whether the EU continues that exemption to Japan indefinitely. And the Trump administration is definitely going to make pressure to do something about Sakhalin-2. And it seems that it is the mainly Meiji, who is really sticking to that Saharan 2 project. But when I listen to the individual company who is involved in Saharan 2, they are really mixed, having a mixed response, knowing that continue to join Saharan 2 would definitely ruin or damage their reputation in the world business stages in terms of the normative side, of course. So I'm not really sure whether whether or how Takaichi government is trying to deal with this Saharan 2 argument. So rather than talking about the security guarantee argument between the US and Japan, or rather than talking about what Japan can do in terms of the better security guarantee for Ukraine. So we are at this stage. So the Takaichi government just started. So we have to keep watching what she is going to do about her new policy concerning the assistance towards Ukraine and the sanction or relationship with Russia. And but I need to add that the security guarantee argument concerning Ukraine in Japan, the discussion is has been very, very low and small scale. And it has passed more than 3 years has passed by having a very inactive and calm argument concerning that. Recently, Secretary General Rutte of NATO mentioned that Japan is obviously part of the security guarantee vis-a-vis Ukraine, but in Japan there's not that sort of a recognition in there. So in Japan, the expansion of assistance towards Ukraine is already on in the pipeline, but at the same time, not necessarily about the security guarantee arguments. So we really have to watch what sort of involvement that Japan is going to make in terms of security guarantee as well. And for the future, I think it is really important that Japan consider about for example, sending a self-defense force for the purpose of demining of Ukraine. So this is what I'm thinking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Higashino, for your insightful and detailed remarks. And now let's turn to Korean perspective. Professor Kim, South Korea has lived for decades under the constant threat from the North. What role does the military alliance with the United States play in maintaining stability on the Korea Peninsula? How does South Korea balance a strong alliance with the US while developing its own high-tech defense forces? And which element of the Korean model could be relevant for Ukraine, which also faces an ongoing threat from its neighbor? Please, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today. I'm very happy to learn every diverse perspective, especially in helping Ukraine the security guarantee model for the next stage. So I think I want to share Korean experience for the my friends in Ukraine people, and all Korean people support Ukraine people because we have a share many similar experiences invaded by China over the 2000 years. So as you easily know, we have also Korean War experience at the time, and interestingly, after the end of Korean War, Seungman Lee, our Korean president, there's a lot of fighting, not just against North Korea and China, but against U.S. government, because the U.S. government didn't want to get security bilateral treaty with Iraq. So Seungman Lee, just like Zelensky, has a very big voice against the U.S. government, and the U.S. government secretly planned to remove Seungman Lee, our president, by military coup or something, but it was failed. But so at the time, bilateral security treaty between the U.S. and Iraq is not easygoing. It's almost a very difficult issue at the time. But anyway, we have now very strong Iraq-US alliance, and we have now 208,000 U.S. forces in Korea. But as you know, Trump now, we have Trump again. Every risk from Trump administration restart again. He want to reduce our USFK, maybe or even withdraw from a lot of the U.S. ground forces, not surprisingly. Actually, he tried to do it during the first administration, but he failed. But now he has a more free hand. Maybe next year or this coming year, he want to have another meeting with Kim Jong-un. Not surprising. Everybody looking at very interesting, but South Korean people has a question: what will be different after Trump Kim Jong Un summit? We'll have nothing, maybe fail about the denuclearization process of the North Korea. So after Ukraine war, all South Korean people, as you already know, support our own nuclear weapon. Almost 70% or something, because of we already recognize the Trump risk. At the same time, rise of Chinese military, not just North Korea with nuclear weapon. So now South Korea, everybody, whether they're liberal or conservative, talking about self-defense capability, not just ROC U.S. alliance. Maybe ROC U.S. alliance will be strengthening again after 3 years when no more U.S. president back to the White House. But anyway, we now want to have a more self-defense capability, and not just U.S., but with our ally, just like Taiwan or Japan and Australia and our Ukraine and NATO partner. So now Korean people want to have a more stronger partnership, not just bilateral relation with the US. Yeah, that is important traditionally, but at the same time, we want to have a 1 point self-defense capability. That's why now Trump lead summit from last week, we want to have a nuclear power submarine, and also our own diverse self-defense capability. And at the same time, we want to expand our partnership with Ukraine or NATO and our friends in the Pacific region. So I think I will recommend our friends in Ukraine to have a more self-defense capability. And if it's possible, we'll have maybe nuclear umbrella from German, not German, France or other stronger partnership, because the European nation anyway will increase the defense budget, and they will have a more stronger defense capability in 10 years. So we'll have a more stronger partnership, not just US, but the best option will be NATO membership for you. But if it's difficulty, maybe you can have a more partnership, not just inside the Ukraine territory, but outside the Ukraine territory. For example, your military forces maybe can join maritime exercise in Atlantic Sea or even Pacific Sea with your military guy with Australia, Korea, and Japan. So you can imagine every diverse scenario, not just having U.S. forces in your territory, but you can have a more option with the creativity scenario. So I always support the IP4 partnership with the NATO and also Ukraine. And Korean experience, I think, will be useful for your decision-making process, especially after the peace treaty. So now, if you have any question, I would like to happy to answer our experience with the before Trump or after Trump and during the Trump. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for sharing a comprehensive overview. And now let's move to the Taiwanese perspective. Dr. Fan, Taiwan's situation is unique. It does not have formal international security guarantees. Which deterrence and protection mechanisms have proven most effective? In your case, how does Taiwan strengthen its resilience in the cyber and technology sectors? And what lessons from Taiwan experience could be most valuable for Ukraine? Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think compared to Japan and South Korea, like Taiwan's situation is more like similar to Ukraine, and also like the security guarantees, also the catchy word in Taiwan recently because of Trump. So I will first like compare the commonalities and also difference between Taiwan and Ukraine, and also I will provide like what Taiwan's model look like. And I have no position to whether Ukraine should learn from Taiwan, because I think different countries have their situations, and I don't think that Taiwan's model is better. I don't think, because it's based on different importance of prioritization between different countries. So I would just provide Taiwan's model for everyone and to evaluate which one is better for Ukraine. And also the first part is the commonalities and difference. So like Ukraine, Taiwan is not a member of any formal alliance and lacks treaty-based security guarantees from either US or other countries. And there are two aspects I want to dive into more about this. The first one is the legal status. For US and Taiwan, we are governed by the TRA, Taiwan Relation Act, and the Sixth Assurance, but we have no mutual defense treaty. And for Ukraine and US, Ukraine is not a member of NATO and support through the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which is by the NDAA. And also the Biden administration signed the US and Ukraine 10-year security agreement. But the difference between Taiwan's TRA, Taiwan Relation Act, and also Ukraine's US-Ukraine 10-year security agreement is one is by domestic law. The other is executive order. So using this different level of a different level in US legal system. So one is act, one is executive order. But we both rely on the legal or political instruments short of former alliance obligations. And second perspective is the form of guarantee. So we are all mechanism-based assurance. So we through arms sales, training, and also the executive level security agreement, multi-year aid, some kind of the cooperation. So we both derive protection from institutional mechanism rather than the treaty causes. So you will see the difference between act, executive order, but we both rely on some mechanism short of the strong bipartisan institutionalized support from the US, and is rooted in the TRA, what I mentioned before. So I would say Taiwan's model security architecture roots in two complementary pillars. One is what I mentioned, the protection part is the mechanism-based protection. Legally codified cooperation frameworks like a substitute for defense treaty. And second part is deterrence, what they call the silicon shield. It's the strategic indispensability. It's irreplaceable role in the global supply chain. So I will first give a context about what U.S. stands to Taiwan. It's guided by One China policy, and also One China policy have the three pillar. One is Washington's One China policy is grounded in three key instruments: the three U.S.-China joint communique, the Taiwan's Relation Act, and the Sixth Assurance. So unlike Beijing's One China principle, which defines Taiwan as an inalienable part of the PRC, the U.S. One China policy leaves Taiwan's status undetermined and emphasizes that any resolution must be peaceful and mutually respectable. So we can see that that's the basic stand for U.S. to Taiwan. Just give a context to everyone who are unfamiliar with Taiwan. And also I will point out to the protection part. It's the institutionalized non-treaty agreement. So Taiwan's protection is sustained through the de facto security compact with the U.S., which is the TRA, and built in the legislative foundations and bipartisan consensus. So first is the legal and political foundation. So what I mentioned, the TRA, Taiwan Relation Act. So TRA provides the legal foundation for unofficial U.S. and Taiwan relations, following the shift of diplomatic recognition to Beijing. So there are three key provisions. First is maintain a self-defense capability. The U.S. should provide defense articles and service necessary for Taiwan's defense. Second is resist coercion. So the U.S. should maintain the capability to resist force or coercion endangering Taiwan's security or social and economic system. The third one is the grave concern clauses. Any attempts to determine Taiwan's future by non-peaceful means constitutes a threat to Western Pacific peace and will be met with the grave concern by the U.S. So why I have to go text by text about what TRA is? I want to make a comparison, the text comparison between the TRA and also U.S. and Ukraine bilateral security agreement, because we can see there is a similarity between the U.S. Verbal usage. The grave concern is if force is used, aggression occurs. The TRA writes the U.S. will consider any efforts to determine the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means a threat and a grave concern to the United States. There's also in a grave concern about the U.S. and Ukraine bilateral security agreement. Any future aggression against the sovereignty of Ukraine of either party will be a matter of grave concern to other parties. So the first one is the grave concern. The second one is deterrence and credible defense. So in TRA, the U.S. the U.S. policy to provide Taiwan with the arms of defense character and to maintain the capability of U.S. to receive any resort to force or coercion affecting Taiwan's security system. And the BSA in the Ukraine part, is it the policy of the United States to assist Ukraine in maintaining the credible defense and deterrence capability? So we see that there's a similar language in use of the deterrent and credibility defense provided by either Taiwan or Ukraine. And the third part is the constitution consultation mechanism. So in the TRA, the president shall inform the Congress promptly of threats, and the president and the Congress then determine appropriate actions in accordance with the constitutional processes. And in the Ukraine part, is if there is an armed attack or threat, the parties should immediately meet, where possible within 24 hours at most senior level to decide the next step and edit the defense needs. So we can see that in the Taiwan cases, there's a Congress and the president part. But from the Ukraine part, they are just all parties. So there are more like vague words inside it, but they all need a consultation mechanism. So there's a similarity between the BSA and also TRA in the both cases. And then I will point out to the sixth assurance is what Reagan administration have provided Taiwan with the sixth assurance. And that is not a legal foundation, but it's just a memorandum between the President Reagan. So there are core principles: no fixed end date for U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, no prior consultation with Beijing on such sales, no mediation rule between Taipei and Beijing, no change in the U.S. position on Taiwan's sovereignty, and no pressure on Taiwan to negotiate with PRC, no authorization of U.S. commitments under the TRA. So people can make analogy about what the Ukraine cases have progresses right now, the territory, like different kinds of issue. So there's a sixth assurance provided by President Reagan to Taiwan. So basically the TRA and also the sixth assurance ensure sustained U.S. support for Taiwan's defense capability without formal diplomatic recognitions. And also there's a Congress part, provide Taiwan with NDA annually, authorize U.S. and Taiwan joint training, logistic, and arms transfer. And also there's a just passed act called Taiwan's Enhanced Resilience Act. And it provides up to $10 billion in security assistance, include grants and loans, and mandates the U.S. strategy to counter the Chinese coercion, promotes Taiwan's participation in international organizations, expand information sharing and training. So there is a legislative reinforcement from Congress to support Taiwan. So we can see there is a legal political foundation, and so there is a legislative reinforcement to support Taiwan, even without any legal, former alliance treaty, and also any recognition about Taiwan's status. And what is the U.S. military posture in Taiwan? Consists with the 1979 normalization with the PRC. The U.S. maintains no permanent military bases or station forces in Taiwan, no armies in Taiwan. However, under the TRA, Washington conducts security cooperation training and technical assistance programs. So that is the protection part. What I mentioned, the TRA and also the act from the Congress and also the sixth assurance. Next part is the deterrence part. So what I call deterrence, because if PRC is going to invade Taiwan, it's not going to take the silicon in Taiwan. So the deterrence part is going to increase the cost of invasion. And Taiwan make the semiconductor part of that work because it make all the stakeholders concerned about Taiwan's situation. If Taiwan is being invaded, the chips will have the shortage. So that is the Taiwan deterrence rests not solely on military strength, but on its strategic value within the global economy and technology system. So semiconductor dominance. I think we're all familiar with Taiwan produce over 60% of global foundry capacity and nearly 90% of advanced node semiconductor, making it indispensable to US, European, and Japanese industry. And also the silicon shell concept. Any conflict over Taiwan will paralyze global supply chains, disrupt financial markets, and undermine aligned defense production, thus raising the cost of operation and strengthening deterrence through interdependence and integration into a democratic supply chain. Deep industrial integrations within US, Japanese, Korean, Europe's ecosystem converts economy linkage into a strategic security linkage. So we can see that Taiwan made the silicon shell is not just a shell to protect, but it's a shell to deter for further aggression by increase the cost about that invasion and make every stakeholder concerned about Taiwan's peace and security. So that is what I would show everyone's Taiwan's model. It built on protection by the legal perspective and also political foundations from the US, and also the deterrence part by the silicon shell concept. That is so far Taiwan's model.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fan. And now I'd like to continue our discussion with a common question to our Asian speakers. With Donald Trump return to the White House and the recent shift of in US foreign policy, as Washington places great expectation on its allies, do you believe that trust in American security guarantees remains as strong as before? And how does this influence your national security strategy? Let's hear your brief reflections. I will start with Professor Higashino, then Professor Kim, and finally Dr. Fan.
Yes, thank you very much for that very important question. I don't really think that the policy taken by Trump administration and President Trump himself is making any sort of a strong security guarantee in any way. And but it is a very difficult time for Japan because when we had the Trump 1.0, we observed that the Trump administration and putting on lots and lots of pressure to European countries or NATO countries about the increasing the budget expenditure, and if he already threatened at the time of his previous government that the US would not protect Europe if they spent enough for the defense. So we have observed this many years ago, and we still consider that it is exclusively about the relationship between the US and Europe. It has nothing to do with us. The US-Japan alliance is very, very special and strong, and this sort of defense budget issues wouldn't be coming to Japan at that time. But as we see it right now, the NATO countries has already promised at the Hague NATO summit in July that they are going to spend 3.5% of budget defense expenditure and say 1.5% of the defense-related expenditure. So in total, they're going to spend 5%. And obviously, U.S. administration is already putting a lot of pressure to Japan to spend more and more about the in terms of the defense. And Prime Minister Takaichi has already mentioned that we can, live up to the goal of 2% goal within this year. Rather than next year or not or something. So we are now in the middle of that sort of pressure that we have already observed for European countries many years ago. So that sort of reality is really coming to Japan at this moment. So we do coming to understand that this sort of security guarantee provided by the US is only fulfilled when we spend more, and when we spend when we have a very convincing defense expenditure or defense strategy in general, or overall defense strategy for the US. It is the Japan-US relationship would only be guaranteed on that basis, on that condition. So the discussion is getting to be very, very hard. And also the new defense minister, Mr. Koizumi, is trying to say that we're going to review our security and defense policy, what we call 3 documents of the security defense policy, and in order to fit the reality of the international security environment, including the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So this overall, environment and the changes the security architecture in Europe and in East Asia is trying to put a lot of questions, and they are very coming. The likely change is just as I said, the revision of the security-related documents in the new Takaichi government. But these things are trying to be remain to be seen. Thank you.
Please, Professor Kim.
Yeah, that is a very important question. I'd like to answer because of Trump everywhere. So his personality is a very big issue in reshaping Korean security issue. So many people concerned about the second administration of Trump in reducing USFK or burden sharing second issue or something like that. But officially, Trump administration did not say too much about the burden sharing issue or USFK reduction or something like that. But a national defense strategy of the Pentagon will be coming out, and political or other people observer said their top priority will be not China, interestingly, because of Albert Colby always talk about China, but many people expected the top priority is about the American land rather than overland issues. So not surprising, will be maybe top priority will be New Hampshire or American land, or with the war on drug or something like that. So, and maybe second priority will be the China issue. So thanks to China or not, anyway, their strategy in Korea will be not very changed, I think. And burden sharing issue also, we have many plans to negotiating with the first administration of Trump. So I think it's many people concerned, but not anything officialized yet by Trump on the Korean Peninsula issue, but only the people concerned about their non-traditional approach to the Korean Peninsula security issue. So maybe in this 6 months or 7 months, the megaton issue is about Trump approach to the Kim Jong-un. And Kim Jong-un have anyway a lot of option with China and Russia, and he is very happy now. So maybe he does not need Trump. But anyway, our National Intelligence Service Agency yesterday observed North Korea prepare for the meeting with Trump during the last week. But they this time they give up. But next maybe this March or something, it will be officialized between Trump and Kim Summit from our National Intelligence Service, the human agency report. So it will be megaton issue on the Korean Peninsula security with the Trump, but not yet. We need to see about national defense strategy of the Pentagon maybe in the coming weeks. So maybe we can see what really Trump wanted to do. Yeah, thank you very much.
Dr. Fan, please.
Yeah, so I think the one thing to be predictable is Trump's unpredictable. So yeah, so every time like Trump making some verbal like remarks, it will be a breaking news in Taiwan. So recently, like Trump has mentioned that Taiwan stole the U.S. semiconductors, and Taiwan is so small, China is too big. That kind of stuff, that kind of words, is really like causes some kinds we talk the U.S. skeptics in Taiwan. Yeah. So and also there's people saying U.S. is hollow out Taiwan's semiconductor industry. So this make everything like people incredible, like make people like think that Trump is untrustworthy. But that is the Trump's remarks so far. We can see that from the Congress part, and bipartisan, and also from the State of Department led by the Rubio. So they all give strong support to Taiwan. So I think we can just separate between the verbal, the remarks part, and also the what action in the like U.S. and Taiwan cooperation's progress. That is why we think that we should like avoid too much interpretations about like what Trump say and goes every day to track what he says, because there are some cooperation is still going and that is under his radar, and we are doing more like defense cooperation. I have to mention that Taiwan's have strengthened our cyber and also telecommunications and also the drone resilience recently in this year. Because the cyber resilience is that we have noticed that the Ukraine have the three main cyber threat categories: DDoS, and also the Viper malware, and also the physical infrastructure sabotage. And also Taiwan have developed different kind of response strategy to learn the lesson from our Ukraine friends about the cybersecurity part, because Taiwan is the world most frequently targeted country for cyber attacks. And also the telecom and also our US friends have also support on this by act or by cooperation framework like GCTF. That is a framework between Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and Canada and UK. So that is like a more framework like to support Taiwan's cyber resilience. And that is the first cooperation is progressing recently. And also the telecommunication resilience is because that Taiwan's undersea cable is being cut recently very often, and like the U.S. Congress have promoted the act about like how to protect Taiwan's submarine cable. So we see from the Congress part, they really notice about Taiwan's communication resilience and have given response by the laws to protect Taiwan to encourage more cooperation. And also the drone. I know everyone talks about drones every day, and Taiwan is also talking about, but we learn a lot from the Ukraine friends. And also, I know Ukraine and US is negotiate or discuss co-productions in both countries. And also Taiwan have also have this cooperation with US about drones. We can become a supplier for the components or become part of the supply chain with the US. So I think that the cyber, the telecommunications, and also the drone resilience part is US Congress or State Department keep going through even Trump's verbal remarks about Taiwan's. So I think that we can see more detail about what is really happening and what is the words in the air. So yeah, the deeds and the needs, I think we should separate.
Thank you very much to all speakers. And as we come to the end of our 1 hour discussion, I'd like to ask all our speakers for a brief closing reflection and answer the question: how can Europe and Asia work together more effectively and strengthen regional and global security in today's challenging environment? We will start with Professor Higashino, then Professor Kim, and Dr. Fan. And I would like to ask Leo summarize our discussion and reflect on all our speakers. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very, very briefly. I think for all of the participants from Japan, from Taiwan, from South Korea, the alliance with the US has been the most important element so far for the respective security. But from now on, I've been talking about this issue for ages, but the East Asia and European relationship is coming to be more and more important than ever. And because of taking account of the Trump administration's uncertainty, I think it is really important that we East Asians has got a partner which is reliable, which is foreseeable, and which is predictable. That is a very important element for our security for any country, be it Japan, be it South Korea, be it Taiwan. So I think it is very important to strengthen the security and strategic dialogue between the both sides. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we should exclude the US from this sort of dialogue and strategic relationship, but we would like to have a stronger and more solid and robust triangle between the US and Europe and the East Asia, and that line between Europe and East Asia has to be strengthened very substantially and concretely.
Yes, for me, yeah, like my country, friendship always matters, just like Japan, Taiwan, Ukraine, Korea. Now here, so is the best example, and our partnership always matter and important. Yeah, just beyond the one-term presidency in the White House. So we need to more human exchange, cultural exchange, economic exchange, and we have a hardcore security issue. But at the same time, just as Dr. Feng said, we have a cyber issue, space issue, other relevant to economic security issue as well. So Japan, Korea, Taiwan always a strong partner of Ukraine and our European nations. So we can build up our friendship together with the US as well. Thank you.
Yes, for me, I think that we have to build the consensus why we should cooperate, because we face with the common threat, and that the two continents can be separate right now because it is interconnected. So we have to recognize that there is the things happening one continent will be happening another continent. So that is the first recognition we need to build up. What common threat we face is. The first is strong cyber, and also the undersea cable. That is what I think is the more urgent three issues for Taiwan and European countries and our Japanese friend, Korean friends to work together. And when we dive into how we should work, I think that can build a deterrence to our competitors and enemies. We are work together, and people talk about gray zone and activities, gray zone coercion. We need to build kind of gray zone cooperations. So I think that would be really important for everyone to have innovative ideas. Even people are not going to recognize Taiwan's sovereignty or status. That doesn't matter, because we should work because that is our common interest. So I think when we have that consensus to build the common interest, we can build up the common strategies to all of the continents. Thank you.
Excuse me, just adding one thing because it is really important. And I think it is really important that Japan and South Korea should make the best of the being the IP4 partner of NATO. I think it is really important that the IP4 partners, which is Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, it is the very outstanding partners of NATO. But at the same time, I don't really recall any substantial, serious dialogue between these IP4 countries in order to better cooperate with NATO. So to start with, I think it is really important that Japan and South Korea should have a very intensive dialogue concerning how we can cooperate within the framework of IP4 of NATO. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that the fact that Japan has an ambassador to NATO as of last year, like specific for NATO, I think this is a sign of a bigger interest towards NATO. But I agree with you that there's kind of still, I would say, there's a framing going on which is not yet didn't go yet into very practical kind of development. Natalia asked me the difficult task to conclude or to summarize. I mean, I think we can have several conclusions. Of course, this is not a complete kind of picture, but I would just say that maybe the most striking and the most important is that we all realize that the credibility of the US kind of deterrence is put into question by some of the policies which are being voiced by the US administration. And I think that what Professor Higashino mentioned, that I've been talking about this for ages. I mean, we've been talking about this for ages as well, that all our countries apart, together with the Europe, with the EU, they have like much smaller possibilities than the US. But we all together, like, even if you compare the GDP of EU, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Ukraine together, where with a bit higher than the combined GDP of the US. So the combined GDP of the US is 25 trillion, and if I'm not mistaken, our countries would with the EU would make 26 trillion. Of course, this doesn't translate automatically into the military kind of force, but I think we all have different elements of a puzzle, which, if put together, we can have a much greater say in the security than we think we would be able without this. So my summary is that we are into the moment of getting away from the inertia on the US security arrangements. Like, we are still hoping that this is in line, but we also realized that it's a real possibility that the US might not be what we expect to be for us at some point. Yeah. Which is a cold shower for us, and I think this is what will make us review so many things and start very practical cooperation between our countries at different levels. I think this is already taking place, but it's not so evident. And I guess I wish we can all gather for a real offline discussion. I mean, a real offline discussion. And next time when we do this, we can also talk about certain very practical results. I think this is very important. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I would like to think that our discussion is a way for our further discussions, as Leon said. On behalf of the New Europe Center, I'd like to express sincere gratitude to our speakers, Leonid Litra, Professor Atsuko Higashino, Professor Kim Yong-jun, and Dr. Cassie Pan for sharing their insight, and to all of people who joined us today. Thank you very much for being with us, and I hope that we will have another opportunity to exchange views in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.